Hello, this is Raf Alvarado. Welcome to Exploratory Text Analytics. In this video, we're going to cover the very general question of what is Exploratory Text Analytics, or ETA. ETA, of course, stands for Exploratory Text Analytics, and I will be using the expression ETA and Exploratory Text Analytics interchangeably throughout this course. One quick note, exploratory text analytics is an expression that I have come up with, and it's a combination of text analytics, which is an existing term, and exploratory data analysis, which is also an existing term. Exploratory data analysis goes back, I believe, to the 1960s. Text analytics is a more recent term, although as we'll see, it has connections to much older fields. So what is exploratory text analytics? It has a couple of important differentiators from what you might think of as text analytics or text mining. The first is that ETA refers to text analytics applied to long-form texts with the purpose of surfacing latent content. By long-form texts, I mean novels, essays, newspaper articles, letters, blogs, journal articles, reviews, etc. These are all units of discourse, if you will, that have a kind of internal structure and a kind of integrity. They can be thought of as standing on their own to some degree, although of course all of them are parts of larger communicational exchanges and larger contexts. The second concept here of latent content refers to a set of things that you might consider cultural or psychological or even sociological. These are what we might call categories, symbols, as in rich cognitive symbols, like say the symbol of masculinity or something like that, values, emotions, ideas, events, and what in general are called collective representations. A collective representation is a term that was developed by the French sociology school at the beginning of the last century, most famously Emile Durkheim. And it refers to ideas that are shared by people. It's sort of a foundational idea of the concept of culture. Now, given these concerns for long-form text and latent content, ETA builds on existing fields such as text mining, natural language processing, information retrieval, digital humanities, and other fields. And we're going to go into very briefly in a later video how these things are connected to each other and how each contributes to the current field of exploratory text analytics. Another important point is that it's called exploratory because its methods are primarily unsupervised, and it's not written here, but the goal is what we'll call descriptive as opposed to explanatory. I may get into that in a bit. And the purpose of these methods, these exploratory methods, is to support human-in-the-loop interpretation. That is to say, it's designed to support people trying to understand large corpora of texts, large collections of texts, and not necessarily to do completely automated interpretations and interactions with texts that you might find, for example, in supervised learning tasks. Although, as we'll see, the methods that you'll learn in this class are not completely alien to those supervised tasks, and I'll describe that in a second. So here's a slide that shows a very common representation of the broad field of data science. It's sort of a conventional view that actually can be developed further. That's another topic. But one thing it has right is this notion that data science as a combination of knowledge of computer science and computer technologies along with math and statistics is always connected to some substantive area, such as finance or genetics or education or something along those lines. So when we work with text, however, we oftentimes don't consider that there is substantive expertise there, but there is. So what would that substantive expertise be? So in the case of ETA, we consider that ETA requires domain knowledge about text. Just as working with genomic data requires knowledge of genetics and molecular biology, or financial data requires knowledge of money and markets, so does exploratory text analytics, as we defined it earlier as working with long-form text, requires some knowledge of what a text is. We may think we have an understanding of text because we use them all the time, and it's almost, as common to us as water is to a fish. But there really is a lot to know about a text, and they are surprisingly complex and interesting phenomena or artifacts. And there's basically a lot of existing knowledge out there about them that can help inform our work in this field. I put out a few here. Knowledge of what a text is exists in various fields. There's linguistics, which, however, surprisingly does not cover the majority of the concepts we want to consider when talking about text. There's text criticism, which is the study of text that goes back to the 19th century. Very important schools of thought developed in Germany, for example, on working with historical texts. There's hermeneutics, which is a field that actually goes back to the late 18th century, which has to do with the interpretation of texts like the Bible or Roman law, as these texts became more problematic in their application to modern society. There's a philosophy of language. There's media studies and the related theories about orality and literacy and so forth. All of these have some import in this field of text analytics. In this course, we're going to begin with a brief primer on hermeneutics, which is a fancy word for interpretation theory, to frame our methodology.